Being reelected to her second term as Cook County State's Attorney, 53% of the vote, certainly not the wide margin that she was accustomed to from the last campaign just 4 years ago when she won 72% of the vote in the general election. Kim Foxx ran on a platform 4 years ago of being kinder to those who are in the criminal justice system, kind of righting the wrongs of past prosecutors, state's attorney, their administrations, but she came under fire, most certainly for the handling of in her office of the Jussie Smollett case, and also prosecutions of other crimes, as crime in the city of Chicago did tick up in certain areas, and critics saying that her office simply was a little bit too soft on crime compared to who came before her in office. Kim Foxx saying that she is happy that the result came the way it did. They were expecting a victory tonight. They just weren't sure exactly how big that victory was going to be. Kim Foxx coming out now. Let's listen in.
Well, good evening. I received a call from Judge O'Brien congratulating me on tonight's victory. I want to thank him for running a formidable race on behalf of the people of Cook County. I also want to send a thank you to all of the volunteers who have volunteered on this campaign in these extraordinary circumstances under COVID. I want to thank one of the most amazing campaign staffs that a woman can ask for, who again, under the most difficult of circumstances, took this case to the people of Cook County in a way that only they could do, led by Alexandra Sims and her team. I want to thank my daughters who are here with me, who have been some of the most resilient and patient people that I have ever met. And not simply because they are teenagers, but teenagers living through COVID who have sacrificed so much over the last 8 months while their mother ran a campaign and they were learning from home and being part of the state's attorney's office and the campaign office and dealing with all that it takes. I don't thank them enough for what they do and sacrifice to be in this world with me. I want to thank my brother who grew up with me in Cabrini and exemplifies what is possible when we believe that everyone in every neighborhood has the ability to achieve and accomplish great things. And lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank my husband, Kelly, who has been my life partner for the last almost quarter century, who has steered our family, like most families this last few months, through some of the most difficult times in our lives. Again, parenting 4 teenage girls, as lovely as they are, dealing with COVID, in his own battle with cancer, and steadfastly standing with me. I am humbled to be your wife. Someone asked me, how do you do it all? I tell you that you can't do it all well at once. But his commitment to the people of Cook County meant that as he dealt with his struggles, he supported me in this race. I also want to thank Omar Muhammad, Larry Ollins, Calvin Ollins, and Marcellus Bradford, whom many of you got to know as the men who were wrongfully convicted in the murder of Lori Rosati. I mention that because I think for many, telling their stories felt like a piece and a part of a campaign, but actually it's a reminder about why this work is important. They weren't here just for a campaign. They were a reminder of the history in this county of a broken criminal justice system that saw men and women wrongfully convicted for crimes that they didn't commit. They came from an era in our history that feels eerily reminiscent to this moment right now. They came from a time in our history where homicides were on the rise, where fear had taken over our streets. And the belief was that justice and law and order should be accomplished by any means necessary. And what they represent by coming and supporting the work of this campaign is a reminder that we cannot go back to the days of old. That this campaign that I ran in 2016 on a promise of turning the page from a history of being the wrongful confession capital of the United States, from the history of John Burge, from the history of Ronald Watts, from the history of an incarceration system that has failed so many of our communities, communities like the one I grew up in 624 West Division. They represented the personification of what this race was about. The last 4 years have not been a cakewalk. I came in and proposed a vision for this office that believed that we had to see the people who used our systems, victims and defendants, and told the unseemly truth that sometimes our defendants were victims and our victims defendants. That I had to tell the story that we are inextricably linked in this city, even when we don't want to talk about it. That when there's crime and violence on the south and west sides, it should impact and feel just as painful for everyone else in neighborhoods outside of that. That we are not our best city when there are neighborhoods where children cannot go out to play. We are not our best city when our elders can't plant their gardens without fear of being shot. And we cannot talk about this city in the way that I've seen us talk about this city in the county in the last several months, where there's been a distinction of where violence is okay and where we get up in arms in places where we don't normally accept it. Violence anywhere is a devastation to our county. And when we talk about it, we are not talking just about buildings and structures. We're talking about people who have felt as though their structures have been destroyed. Make no mistake, 2020 was an incredibly difficult year. My family is not unlike many families in our county who has dealt with the devastation of COVID. A devastation that has rampaged communities of color disproportionately here in Cook County. I talked months ago about the casual racism that allows for us to know that communities of color were dying at a significant impact versus the others. And I begged us and I ask us again to look at that same parallel with our justice system. Look at our justice system and ask ourselves, are we satisfied with a system that sees so many people from neighborhoods that have been left far behind? When we look at documentaries of the riots of times before and see those same neighborhoods having not been built, and try to understand the anger and angst and anguish for those who see prosperity but themselves a casualty. That the conversations about race in our justice system are uncomfortable. And I've been having those conversations since 2016. And I will be frank and honest with you, that as an African-American woman leading this job, it is one thing to celebrate that I am the first, but it also comes with the recognition that when you do this work in this skin, in this body, that sometimes you see the things that we don't talk about publicly. And it has been difficult. But I do it because I know as a county, we are better for the tough conversations about race. That we won't have to recycle the fear and terror that we saw this summer if we meaningfully address these issues head on and not do the easy thing, which is to be distracted by one issue and not talk about the bigger. And that has meant addressing disparities in our justice system related to low-level offenses that shouldn't be there. It means in this next term, doubling down on our efforts to make sure that people with substance use disorder or mental health issues have the resources they need in communities so we can stop the de facto use of our justice system. It means dedicating our resources to attacking violent crime and the cycles of violence. It means continuing the work on righting the wrongs of our past, and whether that's wrongful convictions or vacating the convictions of those who were convicted of crimes that are no longer crimes and people are now profiting from. It means taking this office that had such a marred history and continuing to do the hard work, however painful it is, because at the end of the day, we're inextricably linked. And that when those neighborhoods that have been devastated by violence and incarceration are healthy and thriving, we as a county are healthy and thriving. It has been the honor and the privilege of my lifetime to serve as the Cook County State's Attorney, unapologetically committed to communities like the one that I grew up in. And for those who are discomforted by that, I am your state's attorney too. And if a kid like me and my brother, who came from Cabrini, could ascend to the heights of the work that I do, imagine the losses that we see when we disregard kids from communities that have been devastated by our systems. So, I want to thank you all for the honor and privilege. One more thank you to the hardworking men and women of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, who, despite the glare that comes to their boss, show up in courtrooms every day on behalf of victims of crime. Whether it's convicting the killer of Paul Bauer, of Tyshawn Lee, of Hadia Pendleton, of those names that you may never hear, while they do it in their homes, while dealing with personal traumas related to COVID. They are the heroes that I wish that we will continue to talk about. I am honored to serve with them and among them, and I am committed to making sure that the work that we do in the State's Attorney's Office is rooted in their values of fairness, justice, and equity for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you, and I look forward to serving the next 4 years. We're gonna take a photo.
Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx there, accepting her win here, another 4 years, her second term as Cook County State's Attorney. Strong message of social justice there, saying she is unapologetically committed to the communities in which she grew up, which is Cabrini Green, saying in the last 4 years, it's not been a cakewalk. Sometimes our defendants were victims, and sometimes the victims were defendants. 4 more years of Kim Foxx in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office with that message of social justice. We'll send it back to you.